Hello, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, to Deathgate. I'm Amayirot Akago. Last time we entered the World of Stone, Abayirot, and found it was a bit of a mess. Considering all of the mensch races had died off long ago, and the Sartan had awakened prematurely, only they've now kind of started squabbling amongst themselves now that a power-mad dictator named Kleitus has taken control. And that's the way it's been ever since, with his sons taking over from their fathers. Their sons succeeding their fathers, one after another, up until the 14th, whom we met when we entered his palace, and he tried to poison and kill us so that he could resurrect us using necromancy to tell us more about where we came from. Only we escaped with the help of the Prince Edmund here. And so now we're going on our way to try and fix the colossus that controls this world, which apparently is failing for one reason or another. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yes, my friend? You know the way back to your people? You can get us there?
Of course. If I can get hold of a ship, I can pilot it directly to the secret caves.
That's all. We'll talk later.
Sure. It's not like I've got anything else to do.
Well, it just so happens I've got a ship of my own.
This is an incredible vessel. Great workmanship. I've never seen anything like it. I assume that the steering is similar to the ships that I've piloted. If you'll give me leave, I'll take us to the secret caves on the edge of the Fire Sea.
Edmund looks around the interior of the ship and whistles. You nod, and Edmund, smiling, plants himself in front of the steering wheel. And off we go. To the place. The dragon ship is landing on a shallow gravel beach below a small cave. I had a dog still following us around as well after we possessed it and it formed a bond with us.
Thank you, my friend, for helping me escape. I will be forever in your debt, and I intend to help you in your quest. Right now, however, I must speak with some of the elders. I have to tell them about Kleitus, and we must make plans. If you go back to the palace, I will meet you there. We have a few ships ourselves that can take me. Until then, farewell.
The prince disappears into the mob of Sartan. Hey, it's Balthazar, the wizard guy whose home we ransacked last time around.
How can I help you?
You have to clear your throat repeatedly before the thin man lifts his sunken eyes from the book. When he does, you feel the piercing, burning intelligence of his gaze. Although his body is old and frail, you sense that his mind is as sharp as any you have encountered. He quickly looks you over.
Are you Balthazar?
That I am. I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage. Who did you say you were?
I'm a friend of Edmund's. We met in Kleitus' dungeon.
Ah, of course. I thought I saw Edmund return. You assisted in his rescue? For that we are eternally grateful. How can I help you?
You're the same Balthazar who is the king's necromancer?
That's correct. Although as the royal necromancer, I suppose that I serve Edmund now.
The king is dead?
He wasn't a strong man. I think perhaps he had the plague at the end. It was befuddling his senses. The prince refused to assume the leadership from his father, so we followed the king until he died. Those were strange days. The king would lead us in circles as his mind slowly decayed. His death was inevitable. When someone contracts the plague, it is only a matter of time.
What is this plague?
We're not quite sure. For as long as I can remember, people have been falling prey to a mysterious sickness. We just call it the plague for lack of a better term. When someone contracts it, he dies days later. There is no cure. There doesn't seem to be any cause. It's not contagious in the usual sense. It strikes randomly. All of our efforts to learn more about it have proved futile.
You'll remember there was something going on that was killing off the Sartan. Perhaps this plague is it.
The plague has decimated our population. The dead far outnumber the living. Even if our world wasn't threatened by the imminent collapse of the Colossus, I question how long the plague will let us all live.
I've been to your home. I followed your directions here.
You followed my directions here? I'm glad that my journal served some purpose. If it helped to save one life, it was worth leaving behind.
Prince Edmund has told me quite a bit about you.
The prince is a good lad. A trifle young to be sure, but holding up remarkably well under the strain of leadership. The loss of his father has been hard on him. He wasn't meant to assume the crown for years to come. My thanks for your part in bringing him home.
Oh, it was no problem.
I'd like to talk about something else.
Certainly.
What are you reading?
This is just one of my own books on magic. I'm trying to master one of the lost arts, illusion. I'm so close to the spell that I can taste it. A breakthrough last night has placed it just within reach.
What was this breakthrough?
I've been trying to construct the spell by taking a back route. I reasoned that if I discovered how to break an illusion, I might be able to build one. Last night, I happened upon the correct rune structure to unravel an illusion. Using this as a foundation, I should be able to construct the Create Illusion spell.
How do you even know the unravel illusion works if you don't have an illusion around to test it on?
How long will it take to work out the new spell?
Only a couple of years. This breakthrough has shaved decades off my research.
A couple of years? How long do you expect to be around?
You're right. Sometimes I get too involved in my own work. With the Colossus corrupted, none of us will live out the year. But there's no use in wallowing in despair. I might as well continue, since it keeps me from dwelling on our fate.
Yeah, he's got a point. Best to keep occupied.
What exactly is an illusion?
An illusion is a powerful spell speaking directly to the brain of higher life forms. The spell tricks the mind into viewing reality a certain way. An ancient adept at using the spell could create an illusionary cell around you. No bars or walls would actually exist, but your brain would tell you that they did. To make matters worse, it wouldn't matter if he told you that the cell was illusory. The spell convinces your senses, all of your senses, that the cell is there. Your hand wouldn't be able to pass through the bars, whether you believed in them or not. Like I said, the spell speaks directly to the brains of higher creatures. Lower animals like that dog following you around wouldn't be affected, but for the purposes of the ancient magi, that was enough. Do you see why it is so hard to identify an illusion? When all of your senses are telling you that something exists, there's no reason for doubt. You can't go around suspecting everything, and even if you did, your suspicions wouldn't have any impact on the illusion.
Sounds awfully paranoid.
Create an illusion? That's easy. I've been able to do that since I was a kid.
Well then, I might as well put a halt to my research right now. I'll leave the teaching of my apprentices to you, and I'll resurrect myself since my life's purpose is over. Thank you for the insight.
Sorry. The dog sniffs around the wall to the east. Something seems to be bothering the dog. His hackles are raised and he's growling. What's strange is that he seems to be taking offense at the bare wall to the east, which looks normal to you. Well now, does he know something I don't? Let's see what he can see. A bitter, sharp odor draws your attention to the east. Through the dog's eyes, you see a small tunnel that you missed before, running into the cave wall. Dry, stale air from the opening carries a disturbing smell. An evil smell. Huh. What do you know? He was talking about illusions and there was one right under our noses the whole time. You feel something very wrong about the tunnel to the east. You cannot force the dog's body into it. Perhaps it has more sense than you. Okay. Depossessed myself?
Yes, what is it now?
So this is home, eh? Nice decor.
There are worse places to live. As you know, Abarak is filled with warrens and tunnels. Most of them are larger, considerably more comfortable to live in. We constructed our city in one of those. These tunnels, although spacious enough to contain everyone from Telestia, are cramped, located too close to the lava of the Fire Sea, and have only one small, clean spring, providing scarcely enough water to sustain such a population for very long.
Well, that's very nice, but that's not what I wanted to ask about.
Its only advantage is that the cavern is hidden. The entrance is nearly impossible to find along the extensive coast of the Fire Sea. It provides a perfect place to hide, which is exactly what we are doing.
Have you noticed anything unusual about that cave wall to the east?
Unusual? No, it's just a cave wall, one of many, actually. Why?
What would you say if I told you that it was an illusion?
I'd say, how can you possibly know that? Your brain can't distinguish reality from illusion. You are a higher life form, aren't you? That's just an assumption, mind you.
I've looked at it through the dog's eyes, and it's not there. What do you think that means?
You mean you possessed the dog and he didn't see it? Yes, that would follow. The spell does not communicate with the lower life forms, and by possessing the body of such a form, you would bypass the magic of the illusion. You say it was the east wall. It's an illusion. Imagine! I've been sitting this close to an illusion every day, eager for a chance to test my unravel illusion spell. I'll try it now.
Saw it through the dog's eyes. There's a sentence you don't hear every day. Balthazar wanders over to the cave wall. He touches it, even pushes it with all his might. With a questioning look in your direction, he waves his hands about, tracing blue glowing lines in the air. When he has finished the final rune, the spell floats into the wall. The rock flickers, then dissolves like so much mist. Beyond, you see a small crawlway stretching into darkness.
It worked! It worked! This is exactly what my research needed. Now that I know the Unravel Illusion spell is correct, it won't take long to finish the Create Illusion spell.
Balthazar dives back into his book and resumes reading with rekindled enthusiasm. Well, glad we could help him, and he could help us. So what's here? The dog stays behind, bristling and growling at the tunnel. The air in this small hidden cavern is heavy and thick. Something happened here. Something very evil. Spellbook. A study of necromancy. Oh good, more light reading. Well, that was interesting. We just learned the necromancy spell from the book, and it also told us some interesting information that for anyone brought back to life, you're practically killing someone else to do it. You know, balance of nature and all that. The wave, I suppose. So I suppose that might have been what's happening to the Sartan. That might be the cause of what's happening to the Sartan. And what's up with his robe? Your fingers touch the black material of the robe. It feels inexplicably cold. The frost runs up your arm and soon your whole body begins to shiver. The rocks of the cave seem to take on a life all their own. They whirl and twist to become something totally new. You realize that you are seeing a vision of an entirely different place. You see a man dressed in the robe you touched. Although the room is dark, he is unmistakably Sartan. He stands in front of a gigantic stone spire covered with magic runes. His attention is focused on a large rune in the center of the spire. A nervous dwarf stands nearby, watching this man cast spell after spell at the rune. The wizard curses and yells as the blue fire strikes the stone, but without effect. Curse you! Finally, a particularly fierce spell actually affects the column. Its usually constant blow glue grows faint. With a triumphant shriek, the wizard commands the dwarf to approach the spire and break the rune. The dwarf quakes with fear but remains steadfast. He approaches the rune with a hammer and wedge held on in front of him, and he cautiously touches into the rune, and a massive explosion throws his body back like a rag doll. The man shrieks again, but in frustration. He curses the dwarf's limp body for its weakness. The strength of madness enters the wizard, and even while maintaining the spells that hold the spire's rune at bay, he simultaneously casts a mighty spell, too quick to memorize, upon the dwarf's corpse. A misty image of the dwarf appears, floating over the body. Its expression is one of pain and terror. It's as if something has taken hold of it, in the manner of a rope wrapped around its foot, and is dragging it back into the corpse. When the spirit image has been totally subsumed by the body, the dwarf's eyes jerk open. The man in black screams at the dwarf to finish his task. Slowly the dwarf drags himself to his feet, gathers up the hammer and wedge, and approaches the spire. He touches the tools to the rune again. Again the magic reacts, but now the explosion only rips flesh from his bones. And somehow the dwarf manages to stay his ground. 5 blows of his hammer force a chunk from the center of the rune to fall away. Immediately the rune's glow vanishes and all of the other runes on the spire grow a bit darker. The man in black laughs as he picks up the piece of stone. He admires the rock in his hand as if it were some kind of relic. Then he turns his attention to the obvious hole in the spire's rune. With his free hand he weaves an intricate spell that is too complicated to follow, and suddenly the rune appears to be whole again. The strange pair exit the chamber, leaving the spire seemingly whole, but much darker than it started. The scene shifts. Now you see the same man seated on a throne. He holds a scepter which has, as its headpiece, the same chunk of stone from the spire. Others in his court display obvious fear of their ruler and keep quite a distance from him. This man seems to prefer it. You see no sign of the dwarf. Another scene. The wizard is much older. He is handing the scepter to another younger man whose face bears a close resemblance to that of the wizard. You can see the avarice and longing in his eyes, and the reluctance in the eyes of the wizard in black. After the younger man has snatched the scepter away, he takes no further notice of the older wizard, who walks slowly off. Now you see the old wizard in this fairy cave. He stands on the rock floor alone. The madness in his eyes is overwhelming. He murmurs to himself for a while. You catch only the mouthings of few words. "They'll never find me," and "must never bring me back. Never!" His hands wave aimlessly in the air, but then you begin to see the blue traces of a spell. Soon the rune construct is completed. It flies into his body and explodes into flames. The wizard thrashes a bit, but in short order is no more than a pile of ash. Surprisingly, the robe he wore has been left untouched by the flame. Nothing happens for a while. Then you realize that the same visions have ended, and that you are looking at the same scene only thousands of years later. The robe lies in the same place, covering the ashy remains of the old wizard. Tentatively you pick up the robe, but no further images haunt you. So, now we know the story of how Kleitus made that scepter of his. And the poor bastard then set himself on fire for, I suppose, regretting the whole thing. Also, we've learned the self-immolation spell from him. Obviously, we can cast it, but like an artist, you carefully draw the rune structure in the air. It floats close and slips inside your chest. Instantly, it feels as if your heart has caught fire. You scream and scream until the fire eats away your lungs and throat. After that, you don't have much to scream about. Or with. Yeah. What did you expect was going to happen with a spell called self-immolation? You run up to Balthazar, eager to discuss the amazing vision you've just experienced.
I just had an incredible vision when I picked up this black robe. What do you think it means?
A vision? Tell me about it. This is amazing. You've just experienced the life of our first dynast, Kleitus I. It answers quite a few questions I've had about his rise to power and his reign. It also answers many questions about our current situation.
How did this happen? Why did I see all of these things when I picked up the robe?
I'm not exactly sure. It's possible that when Kleitus took his own life, the robe became infused with his spirit. This happens sometimes, especially when the death is particularly violent and the victim is very powerful in magic. When you picked up the robe, what was left of Kleitus, lying there for thousands of years, passed through you. Your mind interpreted this by showing his memories. This is all speculation, you realize.
Can you interpret the bit about Kleitus' grab for power?
I would be happy to. What would you like to know?
Wasn't there a ruling council at that time? Could you tell me about it?
The High Council once governed over all of Abarak. Kleitus was a member. It democratically created laws for all Sartan and at one time the Mensch as well. When the Mensch woke the Sartan, the council was the body that decided on the course of action. To put a handful of the Mensch to sleep and wait for the interconnection. The council would have continued to rule if Kleitus had not been so power-hungry.
How did he convince the council to let him disband it and institute a monarchy?
He didn't have the political power to do that. No one did. So he required magical power to back his play. He made himself undefeatable with the scepter. No one dared to oppose him after he created it. It was child's play to institute the monarchy. He merely eliminated every possible opponent.
Why did he do all of this?
I believe that to be a member of Abarak's council, the only requisite was a mastery of magic. This implied intelligence, but not necessarily sanity. Kleitus was clearly insane, if not before his play for power, then afterward.
Let's move on to another topic.
Very well.
Can you tell me exactly what happened to the Colossus?
The Colossus is the source of Abarak's magic. It is what warms the stone, melts the ice, and feeds water throughout the world. It was an unparalleled marvel, by far the greatest of the ancients' achievements. It contained so much power that it's easy to see why Kleitus lusted after it.
What was the rune that he was battling with?
It was a containment rune. The spell was a cap for the Colossus's magic. It sealed the spells inside to keep the magic from flowing out, so that the Colossus would last forever.
What happened when he finally subdued it?
Over a period of several months, Kleitus wove an intricate set of spells that temporarily weakened the containment rune. When the structure had drained the rune of enough power, he had his dwarf servant carve a chunk of the rune away. It was a central line of the rune. Without it, the symbol was meaningless and therefore powerless. The Colossus's magic began to drain away.
What did he do by removing a chunk of the rune?
It was much like taking a chunk of flesh from your body. The magic sealed inside of the Colossus started to leak out, like blood from a vital wound.
Why did he do this when it would eventually destroy this world? Didn't he think ahead?
It's true that eventually the Colossus would lose enough power to cease supporting Abarak. I'm sure Kleitus must have known this. It's possible that Kleitus was counting on the interconnection. He must have reasoned that thousands of years would pass before it would actually make a difference. Long before that, the interconnection would occur, and Abarak would survive on the energies provided from it. On that, I'm a little unclear as well. The interconnection is a little mystical to me, but it's obvious that the ancients believed in it. Perhaps they shouldn't have. Thousands of years have passed and no interconnection has taken place. The Colossus is failing and it's taking our world with it.
What did he do at the end, before he left it?
Kleitus was intelligent. He knew that people would see the Colossus with a huge chunk missing from the containment rune and realize something was amiss, so he placed an illusion upon it. Now the Colossus looks normal, even feels normal, but the hole is still there, the rune is still broken, and magic continues to flow.
Can the Colossus be fixed?
That's an interesting question. I suppose it could. If the rune were reconnected, it would begin to function again. The spell would hold in the magic as it is supposed to. I don't know if the Colossus has enough magic left at this point to support Abarak anymore, but at least it wouldn't lose anymore. The original fragment, if it were replaced, would do this. Actually, it wouldn't have to be the original fragment. Anything that had the missing line that fit into the hole would reconnect the rune. The complete rune is the important element, not the composition of the rock. If something with a fragment shape were placed inside the hole, the containment rune would reactivate.
like the replica of the scepter that the dwarf made.
Enough about this subject.
Very well.
What's the deal with the dwarf?
The dwarf was Kleitus's personal servant. He worshipped Kleitus, very like a well-trained dog. I believe that's how Kleitus saw him as well, not much more than an animal.
Why did Kleitus bring him along?
Kleitus needed someone else to break the rune. It required all of his concentration and effort merely to subdue it. While he focused on weakening the rune, he had the dwarf run in and carve out the chunk.
What did he do while Kleitus battled the rune?
He just waited to be of service. Every day, he walked with Kleitus through the catacombs to the Colossus and waited. If you count the amount of times he wandered in and out of the catacombs with nothing to do, that dwarf must have known it like the back of his hand. You couldn't get much more dedicated.
What happened to him when he tried it the first time?
Even weakened, the rune's magic was strong. Kleitus should have known better than to send a mensch to cut the rune. It killed him instantly. I believe that this is where Kleitus finally went mad. He was so close to his goal, and his plans were about to be foiled by a lowly mensch. In desperation, he resurrected the dwarf, knowing that the result would be much more resistant to damage than the dwarf's original body. The corpse dragged himself up, and still loyal to Kleitus, removed the chunk of stone from the containment rune. Kleitus had succeeded in breaking the rune at only the cost of a mensch. A bargain.
Is that when Kleitus instituted the practice of necromancy among the Sartan?
Come to think of it, you're right. Coincidental timing? Perhaps not. It's possible that he instituted the practice to justify his own actions. That's almost unthinkable. We've been using necromancy for thousands of years to cover for one man's mistake? I certainly hope that's not the case.
Oh, it's worse than that.
Where did he end up?
After Kleitus had broken the containment rune, he had no further use of his servant. He banished him to the ancestral home of the dwarves. It's a complex of caves fairly near to Telestia. The dwarf obsessed about Kleitus for years. Having the metal retention of the dead, he eventually forgot that he had completed the mission and broken the rune, so he sat in his cave waiting for Kleitus to come and take him back to the catacombs. I think he's been waiting there ever since.
Let's move along to another subject.
Very well.
Tell me about the Scepter of Rulership.
After Kleitus took the chunk from the Colossus, he fashioned a scepter and used the chunk as a headpiece. He brandished the finished product at the council and demanded a crown. They caved in almost immediately.
What kind of power did this scepter have?
Mostly destructive. It could turn a man to ash with no more than a flick of the wrist. I believe it also had powers of a more subtle nature, though my texts don't address these. What is written is that the scepter is unmatched in sheer destructive force.
How did it get its power?
When the chunk was removed from the Colossus, the containment rune was broken. Magic began to seep from it, much like blood from a wound. It was always Kleitus's intention to draw magic from the wound for his own purposes. He found that he could focus this power through the piece of the Colossus that he possessed. That is why he fashioned the scepter, using the fragment as the headpiece.
Why did the council cave in? Wasn't it filled with master wizards?
Kleitus was drawing upon the magic of the Colossus. Nothing could withstand that. Where the other wizards had to weave the rune construct slowly into the air and pull the possibilities of their spells into this reality, Kleitus could just disintegrate them with a wave of his hand. Before any organized resistance could be brought to bear, Kleitus had eliminated any council member powerful or stubborn enough to oppose him. The others fell into line like cattle.
Moo.
Is there any way to counter the scepter?
That's like asking if there is any way to defeat the Colossus. In a sense, it is the same thing. The scepter draws upon the Colossus's power. It cannot be overcome. Although it wouldn't be necessary to overcome the scepter if it were rendered useless. This is just a wild thought. But the scepter focuses the power of the Colossus that is leaking from the broken containment rune. If the rune were completed and the containment spell resumed working, the scepter couldn't draw upon the magic. It would be useless. All of this speculation is worthless as well. You can't render the scepter useless without completing the containment rune. You can't complete the rune without replacing the headpiece inside the Colossus, and you can't get the headpiece without rendering the scepter useless. A vicious circle.
Don't be too sure.
Where is the scepter now?
When Kleitus grew too old to rule, he placed the scepter in the hands of his eldest son, Kleitus II, and disappeared. The line is continued unbroken until this day. Kleitus XIV now holds the scepter and rules Abarak. I would guess that he has it within his palace.
Let's talk about something else.
Very well.
Can you explain why Kleitus ran away at the end?
I have a theory. After he passed the scepter on to his son, it was only a matter of time until he passed away, either naturally or at the hands of one of his many enemies. He decided to come here, to a secret cave where he could hide forever. Kleitus entered and decided upon a small chamber for his final resting place. He cast an illusion spell upon the entrance in order to keep everyone out. Even if someone found these caverns, they wouldn't penetrate his inner sanctum. He had reasons to want not to be discovered. At the very end, he cast a self-immolation spell. This is surprising, but not totally unexplainable. I believe that Kleitus actually feared resurrection more than death itself. By destroying his remains, even before he was dead, he assured himself that he would never be raised. That's why you found a pile of ashes inside his robes, which were fairly intact. The self-immolation spell destroys the body of the caster, but nothing else. It appears that Kleitus wanted to minimize the chances of anyone finding and raising him, but even so, his actions seem extreme. His remains were completely destroyed. Why did he bother hiding in these forsaken caves guarded by an illusion spell? I wonder if he was hiding anything else.
I found a book lying alongside of Kleitus. It claims that necromancy is forbidden, and that for every person raised, another shall die untimely.
That is the final answer, the one I have been dreading my entire life. Necromancy is forbidden. Of course. You say that for every person brought back, another dies untimely? This is what we have termed the plague. We have unwittingly been killing ourselves for centuries, and we have done so at the command of a long-dead maniac. How could we have been so blind?
It's a lot to take in.
We have to change. We have to put things right. I shall stop the practice of necromancy with my people, but it's only a start. We have to overthrow Kleitus. We have to tell everyone.
Do you know how I could get to the Colossus?
The Colossus is located in the middle of the catacombs in the foundation of Kleitus's palace. It's said that only the descendants of Kleitus I are shown the way through. No one else is allowed in. Even if you were able to sneak back into the palace, I can't imagine how you would find your way to the center of that maze. Besides Kleitus, there's no one living who can show you.
No one living. That's true.
That's all I need to know.
As you wish.
Christ almighty, that was a massive info dump. So what are these guys up to? You go through your repertoire of attention-getting devices, finally deciding on a straightforward tap on the shoulder. This causes the recipient to suddenly drop the playing pieces he was shaking in his hand. He starts to protest, but when the other players begin to moan, his head drops to look at the waiting throw and he laughs.
That was my luckiest throw of the night, and I owe it all to you.
Other players reluctantly hand over small white stones to the winner, which he accepts gracefully.
What are you doing?
Doing? Why, we're playing Runebone. It passes the time while we're waiting for the prince to decide what we're going to do. I was losing all night until you nudged me. That last throw made up for my entire losing streak.
Some of my good luck must have rubbed off on him.
What are those stones you won?
They're not stones. They're rune bones. We make them from animal bones. Each unique rune bone has an individual rune carved into it, but they all interlock. When you throw them down, they form a design. If the bones fall in such a way that they form a legal spell, you win, and all the other players must contribute one of their rune bones to you. If no recognized spell is formed, you lose the bones you threw. Once you run out of rune bones, you're out of the game.
Beats Pokemon, I guess.
Are these spells real? Can you cast them?
Of course not. The runes are all fictitious. We made up the runes and the spells when we made up the game. Although when I created some of my runes, I snuck a peek at a few of the bookworm's old tomes. I wanted the runes to look authentic.
Since I was responsible for your throw, don't you owe me some of your winnings?
Sure, my friend. I guess you did bring me luck on my heaviest bet. I suppose I could let you have a few, just so you can practice a little at the game. If you get good enough, maybe we'll let you join in.
He dumps 4 rune bones into your hand.
Are you hot, or is it just me?
It's just you.
That's all. Thanks, pal.
No problem.
His attention swings back to the game at hand, where he gets into an argument over the legitimacy of a thrown spell. Rune bones. Well, he said they were supposed to be legitimate since he copied them from Balthazar's books, so maybe I can find another use for them. Other tunnels run off from the main cave. They too are filled with Sartan refugees. The tunnels only get more crowded as you get further in. Soon you find it almost impossible to move, so you return to the entrance. Well, I've done all I can here. Let's get back to work. Maybe we can convince that dwarf that we are the person he's been waiting for this whole time. With a little accessories. You slip the black robe over your body. Although the back is rather torn, from the front you cut an imposing figure. Let's see. Okay. Need to get him to grab the snake again.
Would you accompany me?
Hey dude, I'm your boss.
My lord Kleitus, I knew you would return. I have been faithful. As you asked, I spoke to no one about you. I have waited for you to take me back to the Colossus so that we can complete what we started. Take me with you, my lord, please. Take me with you.
Ew, he's got maggots crawling all over him.
Do you know the way through the catacombs?
Of course I do. A dwarf never forgets his way, especially through underground tunnels. I could find my way to the Colossus blindfolded.
Haplo's a natural actor.
I certainly hope so. Your eyes are so weak that you might as well be wearing a blindfold.
My eyes are fine. It's just that the world has grown a bit blurry lately.
You look like hell. Are you sure you can walk? I'm not gonna carry you.
These legs will carry me as far as you wish to go. My devotion to my lord will buoy me.
You sat here for thousands of years waiting for me?
I've waited ever since you sent me here. I knew you would return to take me away. I always knew.
Did you make that statue in the clock tower? Is that supposed to look like me?
A statue? A statue? I carve statues of you all the time in your service. You said that it pleased you. I hope I haven't done anything to make you angry. I might have made a statue when I first came here. I can't remember. Forgive me, my lord. It's all so foggy.
What about the scepter it holds? Is it an exact replica of the original?
You spoke about a scepter. Every time we entered the catacombs, you said that you would make a scepter that held the fragment of the Colossus. We haven't taken the fragment yet. How could I have duplicated a scepter that doesn't yet exist? Take me to the catacombs, my lord. and we will extract the fragment you need to make the scepter. I ask only to serve you.
He's a bit behind.
Of course. Come with me now. We shall go there immediately.
Yes, my lord. Of course, my lord. Let us go. I'm ready.
Joints, unused for years, creak and pop as he slowly rises. It's rather disgusting to see how much of his body is left on the cave floor. Surprisingly, he succeeds and walks unsteadily towards you. Ew. Well, I need his help, so I'm just gonna have to tolerate his company for now. But we are going to need that damn scepter from the statue. So how are we going to get to it? Yeah, the dwarf can't follow us. Let's see, we have a vice now. Would that be of any use, maybe? The vice won't fit in between the tongs of the scepter while it's open. Aha! You shove the vice in between the tongs holding the headpiece in place. It's a snug fit. Loosen. You twist the screw and slowly the tongs of the scepter begin to wrench apart. After quite a while of intense effort, the stone headpiece falls from the tongs' clutches to the metal platform below. Bingo! The vice is stuck between the scepter's tongs. You'll never be able to pull it free. I suppose it served its purpose. The dwarf and the dog follow me back. So I suppose now we should head back to Kleitus' place and find our way to the Colossus, so that we can get to work on finally fixing the damn thing. You are in one of many passages that run through the palace's foundation. A stairway leads up to the more populated areas.
I thought you might be coming back here, and you might need me. The rest of my people are on their way to storm the palace. I came ahead to aid you. I hope you don't mind. I see you're climbing in the social circles.
Oh, hi, Prince Anbent. Nice of you to join us.
The Colossus! Break the rune! Break the rune! My lord commands me!
Totally beyond reason, he pushes you aside and charges into the catacombs. The door slams shut behind him, catching his rotted shirt in the door jamb and tearing a piece of the cloth off. His footsteps echo as he runs deep into the maze. The dwarf's screams appear to have alerted the guards at the top of the stairs. You hear some questioning grunts and loud stomping. Uh-oh. Think we better get a move on.
We've got the stinking rebel trapped now. Only Kleitus knows the way through the catacombs. He'll be here in a second to track that lowlife down and kill him. You hear me, rebel? You're going to die!
Not if you can't catch us, you can't. You hold the cloth in front of the dog. He sniffs at it, then lowers his keen nose to the ground. His ears perk up and he points to the north. You're in a dimly lit chamber within ancient catacombs. The dog sniffs a bit and then points to the north. You hear the commotion towards the beginning of the catacombs. Kleitus is yelling at guards to stay back and watch the entrance while he enters to take care of the problem. You assume that this means you. I'm so glad I got a new doggy friend to point the way out of here. You're in a dimly lit chamber. The footsteps get closer. From the sound of it, there's only one pursuer, but he's running. He knows these catacombs well, and he's gaining fast. North, west, north, north, north. The Colossus! A huge stone spire rises from a pool of lava. Its surface is covered with the ancient mystic runes of the Sartan. The footsteps continue to pound behind you, very close now. No time to waste. Unravel the illusion. As you trace the runes in the air, you start to sense the wrongness of the Colossus. The crux of its magic, the containment rune, was broken and then covered up with an illusion. Your spell carefully unties the deception until the illusion completely unravels and falls away. What remains is a hole in the center of the containment rune where an important line should be. Without this line to complete the rune, it is powerless, and has been ever since the piece of the Colossus was removed. So we slop this back in there. You place the copy of the headpiece on the hole in the containment rune. It slips inside smoothly and firmly. The lines, carved on top of the headpiece, connect with the remainder of the rune and complete the spell. Immediately, the rune begins to glow. It isn't very bright, but you sense that the spell is working. The Colossus's magic is being held inside the spire. None is leaking out as it did before.
Patron, I knew you would be trouble. I should have killed you when I first had the chance. And the young prince as well. It seems that I have been far too generous lately. I'll have to rectify that.
Just as you back away from the Colossus, Kleitus himself comes charging into the room. Panting, he stops and looks right in your eyes. The Sartan lifts his scepter and holds it dramatically in front of his body, but nothing happens. He tries it a few more times, staring in disbelief. The prince laughs, draws his sword, and pounces on the confused dynast. Kleitus doesn't have the sense enough to scream, but looks bewildered by the sword wound left by the prince's attack. He topples into the moat of lava surrounding the Colossus as the powerless scepter falls from lifeless fingers.
So, Haplo, you are a patron. I know about your race. Balthazar taught me well. This should make us enemies, but you have helped me. You have helped my people. Perhaps you did this for your own reasons, but I owe you a debt of gratitude, and I still consider you my friend.
Thanks.
I thought that this was my most valued possession. Now I know that I value my subjects, my world, more. I want you to have it, to make certain that you do not forget us. If Abarak is to survive, we must be linked to the other worlds, and you are the only one that can do this. Take the seal piece. Go back to your ship, through Death's Gate. Save this world, Haplo, my friend. We need you.
That's the idea.
Now I must clean this palace of the filth Kleitus left here. My people should be in position by now.
He nods, then walks away back into the catacombs. Hey, we got ourselves a pendant with all the 5 ruins of the different worlds. Meaning we can go visit Celestra next? Yeah. Stone seal piece, get. Ooh. Boy, what a battle that was. So, going through the motions, rune transfer onto the steering stone. Whoosh. And that's the last one. But of course first, we need to make a stop back and see how Lord Zar is holding up. Boy, is he gonna be unhappy when he hears how the Sartan have been holding up in here. Well, I guess the news of how they have been dying will brighten up his day a bit. The dog followed me all the way here. Here you go. Not sure why I'm still giving this to you, but you produced a stone steel piece while recounting your macabre experiences on Abarak. Quite unexpectedly, instead of focusing on the large number of surviving Sartan there, Zar asks you to elaborate on the art of necromancy. He even asks to see the spellbook that shows the spell.
It appears that these Sartan have done our job for us. By using necromancy unchecked for thousands of years, they've decimated their own race. I'm sure it's fair to assume that there are only a few stragglers remaining in the other realms, like your Zifnab, if any are left alive at all. The survivors in Abarak don't sound strong enough to resist us. In fact, they are in the midst of a civil war. Once the world is reformed, the resulting chaos will be perfect for our army to walk in and destroy both sides.
Yep, going right back to planning the war again.
You've done your job well. There's only one world left, and I hope what you will discover there will be no surprise. Many coffins filled with dead Sartan. If you haven't already, take the amulet that your prince was foolish enough to give you and transfer it to your steering stone. Go to Celestra and bring back its seal piece. We're very close, Haplo. I can feel it.
You said that it was necromancy unchecked that killed the Sartan. Does that mean you'd consider using it with limits?
Do you understand the potential of that spell? An army whose numbers never diminish, whose members get stronger after they die. What force could stand against it? Naturally, we'd have some other deaths to compensate, but they'll be manageable. After a few skirmishes, the mere threat of our army would be enough to enjoin surrender. Then we wouldn't need to use the spell anymore. Until that happens, there are always losses in war.
This dude has a nasty habit of hearing exactly what he wants to hear, and nothing more.
Prince Edmund placed his faith in me to save his world. That's why he gave me the amulet.
This is from the race that consigned you to an eternity of torment, and he asks you for help. Are you seriously considering his plea? Look at his situation. His people squabble among themselves like mensch. Even now, they are in the throes of a civil war. Naturally, he wants you to help him. You represent the greatest threat his kind has ever known. He must not have realized what his amulet would mean to us, but it is our responsibility to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
You don't just represent yourself. You are the vanguard for our entire race. Don't let your emotions get in the way of your mission. I'd hate to have to cut it short. Look deep inside yourself. You'll find that you are a patron. You were whelped by the labyrinthine fires of hate. Hate for the accursed Sartan that put you there. I can trust you, Haplo, because you are a reflection of me. You are my son, as all patrons are my children.
I don't think we're as alike as you would think we are.
Have you learned anything new about the 6 Sartan devils that you were researching?
It happens that I'm very close to finishing my research. I have linked 4 of the devils to the spells that they were responsible for, and the other 2 aren't long in coming. Unfortunately, one of those 2 created the Reformation spell, so I cannot stop now. That's the spell I really need. The ones I uncovered, the original sundering, something called the interconnection, etc., are useless to me. But as I said, I'm very close.
See what I mean?
Can we talk about some of the subjects you touched on earlier?
Of course. What do you want to know?
We already talked about all of this.
That's enough for right now. I'd like to talk to you later if you don't mind.
Very well. I'll be here.
Yeah. I do not like what is going through this dude's head. Anyway, that's everything as far as Abarak is concerned, so join me next time as we head into Chalestra and see what we can see there, as we're nearing the end of our little adventure. Though, from having played this game before, I know we still have a little ways to go before we see the conclusion. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this part of Deathgate. I was Amayirot Akago, and hope to see you all again next time. So, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.